Let's talk about the housing market. I was a realtor for about 4 years, from 2006 to 2010. I had a housing blog where I blogged about the housing bubble. We actually did sell our house at the top of the market in 2005, and I was following all of the spin from the government and the mainstream media about how this is not a bubble. Greenspan, Bush, everyone saying house prices can never go down. They were all lying. It was a huge, huge asset bubble, credit bubble, even with the ratings agencies in on it, labeling these junk bonds as AAA, under the assumption that house prices can never fall, which was totally a myth. They were giving loans to people without documentation of income, and you know the whole story. So during the time that I got into it was the time that there were a lot of short sales, bank-owned properties, and I worked mainly with buyers, showing them a lot of homes. And like I called myself the straight talk realtor, so I was pointing out, like this, these are things to watch out about. Mainly, you want to buy the worst home in the best neighborhood because you can improve the home, but you can't change your neighborhood. And I really like pointing out to people, oh, this is a thing that you might want to look out for. And I wrote a lot of offers, did a lot of driving around. And this was before we had like Google Maps. This is when we had the Thomas Guide. And I had to print out directions. It was just a lot harder driving clients around, but I loved my job. And the broker I worked with is a retired manufacturing executive, and he was very good at statistics. And so he developed this housing model forecast where he looked at the rate of change in the median home price among 5 different housing groups. And that's why when I said in a previous video that the housing market turned in 2003, people don't understand because they were not on the inside. We were there on the inside. We were seeing when we showed houses how many other people were looking at the house, how many offers came in, what the competition was like. So the realtors on the ground were the first ones to notice that there were fewer offers coming in, that more homes were falling out of pending, that that there were multiple offers, that houses were going under contract faster or slower. And of course, we had the pending data and we had the inventory data. To really understand the housing market, you need to know months supply, which is how many months it takes to move all the inventory. So you need to know the amount of the inventory, which only the realtors have. The National Association of Realtors can tell you the sales and the pendings, but they don't give you the inventory. So a healthy housing market has like a 3 months supply. When you get down to a 6 week supply, the prices are going up. Things are moving fast, multiple offers. When you get a long month supply, 6, 7, 8, the prices start coming down. But prices are very sticky on the way down because sellers are very slow to realize the loss in the value of their home. And people are not rational, they're very emotional. This is why activity goes up in the spring. It's emotion. Springtime, house cleaning, moving, buying. There's no other reason. It has nothing to do with school. All the buyers I worked with had no kids. Okay? They're people who are not moving because of school at all. It's an emotional decision. And people fall in love with the house and they want it. And we would tell people, this is a housing bubble. Do you still want to buy? They're like, yeah, we still want to buy. So it wasn't even shooting ourselves in the foot to let people know that it was a housing bubble. Okay, now, so I'm just giving you a little bit of a background there. So in a healthy housing market, you have 3 levels of buyers, okay? You have the entry-level buyer, that's the first-time buyer. That's the young person, their 20s or 30s. They've saved up for a down payment, and they're getting into their first-time home. And historically, a first-time home, historically, the median home price in a city is 2.5 or 3 times the median income for that city. So if the median income for a city is $60,000, the median home price should be $150,000. Okay, that's a healthy housing market because you need people who can get into the low entry. Okay, that's very important. That's the grassroots of the housing market. That's where all the juice comes from. The young person buying their first home. That's the key, okay, you guys? Then what happens is people historically didn't buy a house for appreciation. They bought it so that one day their house would be paid off and they wouldn't have a mortgage. So this is historically, okay? I'll get into the problems we have now in a bit. So you get into your first house and you start paying it off, and your income starts to increase as you start to make more money into your 40s and 50s. Now you have kids, you have a bigger income. Now you're going to move up into a bigger house. So now you have your move-up house, your mid-tier house. Some people become very rich and buy $1 million homes, but usually it would be, like say you move from your $100,000 home into a $300,000 home. I'm speaking of like in the 90s when I was a homeowner. Now I'm in an apartment, but I've owned homes, I've built a house, I've sold houses, okay, myself. Okay, so now you're in a mid-level home, and you sell when you sell your first home, you're selling to another first-time buyer. When that first-time buyer buys your home, that's what allows you to get up into the second home. If you don't have a first-time home buyer, you can't sell your home. You need these people to come in, buy the house, and then you go into the second house. Now, what typically happens, people might keep moving up or move laterally as they transfer jobs, because the ability to sell a home, even though you can't sell a home quickly, you can in a healthy market. So you can sell your home in Kansas and take a job in New York, or sell your home in Florida and take a job in California. So there's a lot of mobility that's allowed, in upward mobility and lateral mobility across the country. And then typically as people get older, they will want to get into a single-story home, as they don't want to climb the stairs anymore, or they want a bedroom on the first floor, or they will downsize. They will downsize into a townhome or a condo or a small home. Their kids are gone. They don't want to maintain the yard and the big house, and they maybe want to take some of their equity out, and they will downsize into, again, the kind of, not necessarily the type of home that a first-time buyer had, but maybe they'll buy a condo. There's no maintenance. So there's a cycle, okay? There's a cycle of these people. And again, in a condo building, you may also have first-time buyers. Now, this cycle is completely broken, okay? We have a sick housing market. It's sick because we don't have first-time buyers anymore. We don't have people who can afford to get in. The only people that have been buying homes in San Diego in the last 15 or 20 years are either are cash buyers, middle-aged people making a cash investment, foreigners, or young people who got a down payment from their parents. Okay, of course, when I was a realtor, I had a lot of young Asian clients, and you wouldn't believe how much cash these people can save by the time they're 30. They had hundreds of thousands of dollars. They're very frugal. And so they were like really good buyers to work with. All my Asian clients, they had the 20% down. Okay, like good clients. But the reason you want to put 20% down, I'm going to tell you why. Number one, selling a house, there are costs, there are transaction costs. It's not like selling a stock. Selling a house has transaction costs. You have to pay the realtor 6%. You also have closing costs when you buy a house for the loan, but when you sell the home, you have to pay the 6% to the realtors. I think there's some change in the law about realtors' commissions. I'm not going to get into this, but you have to pay a fee to someone, okay? And often you have to make repairs to the house. You can't just buy a house and do nothing to it and think it's going to rise in value. Owning a home, in order for your home to increase in value and maintain value, you have to keep up with the maintenance, and you have to do improvements. One problem we had in selling one of our houses was when we bought the house, it had an old kitchen, which I didn't care. but it was really hard to sell. People would come in and go, we love your house, but the kitchen's outdated. Okay. I showed a lot of condos in Coronado and La Jolla that had not been updated in like 20 or 30 years, with crappy carpet and like crappy kitchens. Some people didn't maintain the paint or the roof or basic things because they couldn't afford to. But anyway, so in order to sell the house, you have to do some upkeep. But anyway, there's a transaction cost. So whatever equity you have, some of it will go to the realtor. Then you have the cost of moving. You have the cost of applying for a new loan, a mortgage, the application fee, the down payment you need. So there's like a transaction cost. So it's good to have some equity because house prices in the past have gone down. In fact, the first job I had in Phoenix, working for this computer company, one of my coworkers was talking about how she couldn't sell her $300,000 house because it was underwater. And I'd never heard of this before because I came from Nebraska where we don't have cycles like that. So there was some kind of a thing that she had bought the house at a certain price, she and her husband. The price had gone down and she wasn't able to sell it, and she had to wait a few years for the market to recover until she could sell her house, and she broke even. The idea that a house is an investment is a whole new idea in our country. Houses were not typically considered, the house you live in was not considered an investment. It became that way after the internet bubble. Then we had the housing bubble, and people started seeing the houses as piggy banks. They were told to liberate their equity, to buy stocks, and to buy more houses. And all this speculation began in the housing market. And that's not what houses are for. I think it distorted the market. It brought all these investors in. It brought the house prices really high, which was good for the people owning the houses, but it was not healthy for the housing market itself. Because with what I call housing inflation or bloated housing prices, people who own houses think of it like, oh, I have this asset, I have all this money in my house. But I'm going to turn it around and say it's a bloated market. It's an unhealthy market. Because who are you going to sell that house to? Who are you going to sell that house to? And most people can't afford to sell their house. They're stuck. They can't afford to sell their house because even if they could find a buyer, where are they going to go? Can't buy another house at these interest rates, which are actually historically average interest rates, 7.5%. We're out of the debt bubble where they put it at 0. Who are you going to sell it to? There are no buyers. People can't buy a starter house at $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 in San Diego. You can in Nebraska, where it's $250,000, $300,000. People are still buying homes, but in a lot of cities, people can't buy homes. The first-time home buyer has been muzzled. They're out. So you don't have new people coming into the market. You don't have it. Who are you going to sell it to? That's your problem. You're stuck. Number 2 problem, let's say you get lucky and you find a buyer. Where are you going to go? Most of these people, like my apartment rent is almost $3,000 a month in a 2-bedroom apartment. I don't usually talk about this, but since we're on the topic, a lot of people that are owning a house in San Diego right now, they bought it so long ago, their mortgage is like $1,000 a month, $1,500 a month. They can't afford $3,000 a month. Can't afford it. Can't afford to rent. They can't afford to sell. Even if they had the equity, where are they going to buy? Where are they going to buy? I had a friend in the same situation. She refinanced her house close to $1 million when she got divorced. By the way, she bought out her husband. So don't give me this bullshit that women get the house in the divorce. She bought him out, gave him the equity. She financed it herself. She's like, where am I going to go? The rental inventory is low. The rents are really high. And you can't really buy anything else. So you're stuck. You can't even sell your house in San Diego to go to New York or Florida to have your career mobility because you're stuck. You can't sell it. Now, some people are waiting for interest rates to go down. It's not going to happen. The mortgage rates are tied, in my opinion, the mortgage rates are tied to the 10-year treasury, which is set in the bond market, and that has to do with the value of our dollar. How much money the US has to offer investors to buy our treasury bonds, which are slowly sinking in value. Those of you who love the war against Russia and freezing Russian assets, okay, you got your wish. All these people who love the lockdowns, like don't work, print more money, $6 trillion. Printing all that money devalues the value of each dollar that we hold. Sanctioning and freezing assets of other countries makes other countries see us as a risky investment. Inflation is high. We have inflation in housing and inflation in stocks. I'll get to the stocks next. Right now I'm on housing. It's a bubble, it's bloated, and it's sick. And even the people who have equity, they can't untap that. You can't tap out your equity. Where are you going to live? Say you bought a house at $400,000, now it's $1 million. You have $600,000 in equity. Where are you going to go? Well, that's not a good example. Let's say you bought your house at $500,000, and a year later it's worth $700,000, which is kind of what happened during COVID. Okay, now you feel really rich because you've got $200,000. You feel so rich. Okay, you're going to sell it. You have your $200,000. If you live in an apartment, it's going to be gone quick. If your mortgage was only $1,500 a month, and with $200,000, where are you going to get? Where are you going to go? You know, it's only good if you're going to move in with like your kids or something. You're stuck. It's not good. Housing was never meant to be a way to build wealth. Your residential, I mean, people who are real investors, they'll tell you your residence is not your investment. That's a place where you live. Your investment is supposed to be in like stocks or entrepreneurial things. I guess you could buy investment real estate like rental property. That's an investment. Rental property is an investment because eventually you'll pay it off and you have the cash flow from it. And so the people are basically paying your rent. And eventually you can own a lot of properties. Like my grandfather, he owned a bunch of real estate properties. It was an investment. Eventually it was paid off and he just had the income. When he died, he left a house to each of his kids, like a apartment building. So, but residential real estate was not ever meant to be an investment. The problem is that our economy is so sick and lopsided. People don't want to invest in starting new businesses. It's not conducive. So we have all these bubbles. So residential real estate is sick. We don't have a first-time buyer. Without a first-time buyer, we can't, there's no liquidity. It has reduced the liquidity. You don't have a first-time buyer. So you don't have a first-time buyer, how can you sell your house to move up or to move somewhere? And these people with these big houses that want to move into a smaller house, how can they sell? Because we don't have the move up. You got to have the move up buyer. The move up buyer, you got to have the first-time buyer, the move up buyer, and the move down buyer. And it's all stuck. It's stuck. The other thing that happens is people get very emotionally attached to their house. I could tell you, like I would show these houses, and like let's say a house was obviously supposed to be like I was working around like $1 million buyer range usually. So look at these houses, and like this person had priced their house at say $900,000, where every other house in the neighborhood was only selling at around $700,000. So this house would just be on the market, but maybe my clients really like the house, and we're thinking about like, how did they come up with this $900,000? Well, because in a neighborhood 4 blocks over, which is a much nicer neighborhood, a house of their size was selling at $900,000, and they're like, well, our house is as good as that house, so that's the price we want to put on it. Well, just because it's what you're emotionally attached to or fantasizing about doesn't mean that that's what it's worth, because the people looking at houses, they're evaluating you based against all the other things they can get, and they want their best deal. So, and the longer the house stays on the market, you got to keep dropping your price. People lose interest. They're like, what is wrong with that house? No one's bought it. It's always better to, what I would do with my buyers actually when we're trying to decide how much to offer on a house, I would take them around. Like this was, I had so much fun being a realtor. God, I loved it, but I didn't make enough money to stay with it. So I would take them around to other homes that were active, that were similar, or homes that were already impending. And then I would also show them listings of similar homes that are already sold. So we try to get an idea of what other buyers were paying for it, because the appraiser is not the appraiser can only tell you what other buyers have paid or what the reconstruction value is. But the ultimate value of a house really is what people are willing to pay for it. So right now, people are willing to pay more for a house because other people have paid more for a house. And some of it also has to do with the value of the land. That's a huge factor, and the cost of the construction. But in a bubble economy, it's all based more on like no logic at all. That's why they go up and down. So we have a very unhealthy housing market right now. And I'm going to tell you that through all the homes we bought, we did a lot of projects on our houses. I think that young people are really missing out by not owning a house. I'm going to tell you the benefits of becoming a homeowner. It doesn't have anything to do with building, as an investment, really. Because one day you want to live somewhere that you own, that you don't have to pay the mortgage anymore. That's one. And number two, it allows young people to have a financial goal in mind, something that they want to save for. How many years, people have to save for the down payment on their house. They have to get their credit in order. They have to save for that down payment. It keeps them focused and disciplined financially. Whereas now people are like, I can't buy a house anyway. I guess I'll just buy more purses and jewelry and take these trips and go into debt. Who cares? Because I can never buy a house anyway. It's very sad. Then when you do buy a house, you get a chance to spend a lot of your energy and your effort in doing maintenance and improvement projects on that house. I cannot tell you, oh my God, this first house we bought was such a fixer-upper. It's in my book, The Fuck List. It was such a fixer-upper. It was this cute 1937 house with original oak floors, so many original things, and it needed so much work. And we were so poor when we bought it that we didn't have any furniture. And we slept on the bed that the previous owners had left, this mattress on the floor. And eventually we bought a new mattress. And then my ex-husband, he built a futon and he built a table, and we bought these folding chairs. Initially, we just ate on the floor. And there were so many overgrown oleanders. I cannot tell you how many 100-degree days I spent in Phoenix summers cutting these damn oleanders. Painting. We did like so many projects on this house. My ex-husband resanded the wood floors and he replaced parts of the roof. I mean, there were so many projects. We planted things, we planted trees. I mean, so many trips to Home Depot. And I think that's worthwhile energy spent. That's better than being on our phones all day or being on Facebook all day. Like, it gave us a purpose. It gave us like something to put our energy into. And I think that's a good thing. I mean, it kind of also can anchor people into communities sometimes. Sometimes you don't like your neighbors, sometimes you do. But it also gives people a sense of stability, a place where kids can be and grow up and see, there's more stability. People don't move as often as they do when they're in apartments. Like where I live, some people have been here a long time, but there's some people that frequently move. There's nothing wrong with that, but young people are missing out on that opportunity to save for something and work on something that has meaning and purpose. I do not think this is going to get any better. And unfortunately, the government didn't stop anything. I think they should have made a law that should prevent hedge funds from buying residential real estate. Residential real estate is designed for the first-time home buyer. They eliminated, they reduced the liquidity in the residential real estate market when they allowed hedge funds to, with cash, to compete against first-time home buyers. And also by letting inflation get out of control and printing all this money, which has made money go into assets. So where is all this money going that they printed? People need a return on their investment. And at one time, the return on investment was by investing in U.S. businesses, in actual companies that made things, in infrastructure, in research and development, in capital expansion, and new businesses. Peter Lynch wrote a book a while back, and he talked about buy a stock in a company that you see that people are interested in, like Gap. That was the one that he had invested in. But now it's not that. Wall Street has become a casino. It's a gambling house where the values of these stocks, to me, have no relation to the underlying value of the profit per share. No relationship at all. It's just a huge freaking casino. And that benefits the people who have money in stocks, but not all people have money in stocks. I myself, I'm very wary of the stock market, actually. I don't trust it because it's not based on any fundamentals. In my opinion, the economy has been in a recession for a really long time. We have a huge poverty class, and the housing prices and the stock prices are up, which are out of alignment with the underlying foundation of the actual economy. So it's a bubble. It's all this money looking for a place to go. And the fact that the money of all these hedge funds and all these people, the corporations are using their cash to buy back their shares, and hedge funds are using their money to compete with first-time home buyers for residential real estate and to rebuy the same stocks. When was the last time we had a new company that had a new stock offering? That was the purpose of stocks. Company had an idea. They sold stock to get investment so they could expand. That's all gone. That's gone, you guys. That's gone. So that money has to find a place to go, and it's going into bubbles. And all bubbles pop. All bubbles pop. We have an unhealthy housing market. We have an unhealthy stock market. But unlike the housing market where people are stuck in their homes, the people in the stock market can still make money when they sell. But it's a few people. It's people that have been in there for a long time, or people who happen to make good choices. It's just a few people, I think, making money in the stock market. And it's a bubble. It's going to pop. I was talking about the bubble in the late 90s, the internet bubble, and everyone's like, it's a party, I want to be part of it. Well, they lost all their money. The stock market is artificially high, and they're trying everything to keep this propped up, because if the housing bubble bursts and the stock bubble bursts, the U.S. economy will be exposed for the empty suit that it is. With that, I will end my video. I will be back for your comments.